Then we'll have the pledge first, if you'll all rise. And Judge Self, would you lead us?
Certainly will. Join me in the pledge to our flag and our republic. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Okay. The first order of business is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Dr. Marshall and Bear.
And that's approved. Now we're going to take one of our action items out of order. We're going to go to 18.
Yeah, it's actually an information order, it's an information item, but we have a person here who needs to get back to his work, and so we'll do that very quickly.
Well, actually, the sooner we send him home, the quicker he quits billing us, but that's another story for another day.
Okay.
We were able to meet with the audit committee prior to the board meeting, and we went over the internal control evaluation that was conducted by Weaver and Tidwell. We were able to address all the elements, points of consideration that were brought up within that meeting. We had participation from Judge Whitley and Judge Horn in the meeting, and I'd asked them if they had any comments from the meeting.
I guess I'd just say that we went through it again. This is more a review of the internal controls. It's not necessarily in connection with our financial audit. That will be done later. And as a course of that financial audit, they'll do some testing of the internal controls. But this was last done in, I believe, 2008. And it's just kind of a come in and let's reevaluate, or let's look at again and make sure that our internal controls are in place, and that if things have changed, that they validate that and map that. It was a good meeting. Since the 2008 procedure, we had at that time there were some findings. A lot of those findings have fallen off. They've corrected everything, and it was a very good meeting, and felt very good about the results of the audit. And so I will move that we receive and file the audit report, or the internal control.
Can we have a motion and a second?
This is an information item.
It's
Not
what?
posted as an item. It's an information.
So we don't even need to receive and file?
That's what I thought at first.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, and thank the committee for all the work they did, and for our consultant. So thank you very much. All right. Mr. Monte.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, the item we have before you is a resolution to review and approve NCTCOG's investment policy. In accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act, we must review the investment policy each year by its governing body. There's been no changes to the law. There's been no changes to the policy itself. The one change that did occur is to our authorized broker dealer list. Citigroup Global Markets was removed. Just as a point of reference, our authorized broker dealer list matches the City of Arlington and the City of Carrollton's respective lists. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? I don't see any. So this is an action item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Please,
That's the second.
and Mr. Mercer,
Okay.
resolution.
You have before you the investment report for the fiscal year 2014, the fourth quarter. We started out with right under $50 million. We ended up with just a little bit more than $48.1 million. We had a return fiscal year of 14.03%. In addition, you have before you also the regional toll revenue supplementary report. This is a 2-month report because the state report lags, so this is through August 31st. We started out this month with $1.727 billion. There was a net reduction of some $4 million. Ended up with $1.723 billion. We had a return of 0.4% through the state controller's office, which is the same or essentially the same as it was for fiscal year 13 or through August 13. That I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I'm looking to see. I don't think I've seen any questions, Ms. Mercer. You're doing a great job.
All right. Thank you.
So, do we need action on this one?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nygaard, and the second was Mayor Monte. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Mercer?
Yes. All right.
Item 4.
This is the resolution authorizing fiscal year 2015 contract option with Gradient Solutions for professional advisory services. We've been using Gradient Solution, which was formerly WebWatch, since 2011. We did that through a procurement process. We had an initial 3 years that has been completed. That has been satisfactorily completed. They assist us with formulation of our audits. We have many contracts where we have contractors out there doing work, and so they review our audits. They both in what we want to audit and also what the subsequent findings are, how to make our audits more efficient and proficient. And it's a great resource for staff. Calvin Webb's experience as an audit partner for a big 6 Big 4 accounting firm. His assistant advice gives us staff assistance that we would not have to be able to afford on our own staff. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I did not see any lights on, so again, thank you.
They're saving them for me.
You got that right. We're loaded for you. Okay,
Move for
thank you.
Motion.
Danny made a motion to move, and second by, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. All right, number 5, that was moved. Oh, did we have that? Okay. Then we'll move to item 6, resolution authorizing acceptance of the fiscal year Homeland Security Grant Program Subrecipient Agreement.
Good afternoon. This is an item that I bring to you every year. It's really an administrative item at this point in time. Every year, the COG has been requested by both the Urban Area Security Initiative, cities of Fort Worth, Arlington, and Dallas, and the state administrative agent under the Office of Homeland Security to administer the Homeland Security funds for the upcoming year. You might remember a few months ago I brought to you a list of projects and prioritizations for us to consider. This has to do with that. So this allows us to accept the funding, to be able to manage and administer those particular grants, sign the subrecipient kind of contracts with those cities, and then do the regional activities like, if you remember, we have SWAT training, we have some other kind of regional projects. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I've got Brian Hatfield and Marcy Bruner, our project managers for both State Homeland Security and the Urban Area Security Initiative. They do a great job with that.
Great. Again, I see no questions. Well, okay, so we're just taking the money, that's a good thing.
And allowing Mr. Eastland to sign the
To do it,
contracts.
yeah. That's great. Okay, there are no questions, so I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Judge Horn and Mr. Marshall, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much.
Carries. Thank you. Now we have Tim Barbee with the resolution authorizing the 2014-15 purchase of computer hardware software and information technology contract service.
Madam President and members of the board, each year we work with the departments and determine what their information technology needs are going to be to support their work programs for the coming year. We combine that with our existing obligations for software licenses and hardware maintenance contracts. We include some services for projects that may come up where we don't either have staff available to work on the project or we don't have the expertise. The total of this amount comes to $2.5 million for this year, and we're just requesting approval to spend that money as the departments need to come forward and need to spend it, and it's based on the budgets that have been approved. Funding available.
Okay. Information technology is very important. Yes, guys.
What percentage of this 2.5 million is for the workforce? 13 workforce officers?
There's pieces of it that support the whole agency, and I don't have the specific amount there, but I do have, workforce has about some information they gave us is $200,000 for specific needs they have, and then the wide area network is approximately that amount as well.
So the wide area network gets out into the centers.
The wide area networks is the network that connects all of the workforce centers to our central office and also gives them access to the state where they have software that they have to support through using the state software.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Then I'll entertain a motion. Okay. Carol and Marshall. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Thank you. Mr. Barbee, we have a resolution authorizing contract with Matrix Resources for the public employee benefits cooperative application rewrite effort.
The Public Employee Benefits Corp provides services to 5 or 6 entities in the region related to healthcare services. We provide the technical support for that. The application that has been used has been used for more than a decade, and it's programmed using technologies that are no longer supported. So we have to upgrade the software. We went out with a request for qualifications to select a vendor to work on this project, and we worked closely with the PEBC staff on this. It's set up as a 2-phase project. The first phase is to identify exactly what is needed, and that first phase is about $50,000. It's just under $50,000 for the assessment. Second phase, we'll only proceed once the first phase information has been evaluated and with the approval of the PEBC board. It cannot proceed without the approval of the PEBC board. So as I said, we're working closely with the PEBC staff on this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Ms. Konzovic is also here if anyone has any questions on this.
Lisa, Judge?
Source of the funds on this, because not every entity participates in this.
It's from, we receive funds from PEBC annually for supporting the system, and some of the funds are from that, and we're not requiring any additional funds from them. Any additional funds will come from the PEBC members.
It will be looked at in our annual budget. Yeah, it will be looked at in our annual budget. It's really one of those things that will not, we're approving this, and it has a cap on it, but this is not something that we're going to spend until the PEBC board gets back, and then we do it from there. So, move approval.
Second.
Okay, quickly,
Mr. Scarlett.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Morris with the resolution authorizing consultant contract with DeChant Consulting Services for Photogrammetry, training, and equipment.
This is a great day for transportation. We have about 9 items, and you can see the breadth of what the Regional Transportation Council asked us to do. This is an item you wish to get more information on, so you give us a homework assignment. We're going to bring it back to you. It is an action item. And to give you some perspective, 50% of the delay you experience in the region is due to inadequate capacity. That's something, if we get enough money, we can make grade separations or widen lanes. The other 50% that you'll experience is due to some sort of incident or accident on the system. So this item is focused on the 50% that we cannot solve from traditional transportation improvement. We're responsible to coordinate freeway management activities. The federal government is funding us to do so. They're funding us with implementation money to work with local governments and responding to incidents and accidents. As part of our certification process, we are reviewed by the U.S. Department of Transportation on this subject. The Appendix 1 has an RTC resolution from 2008. This is the second resolution where the RTC continues to encourage us and encourage our partners, encourage local governments to be more active in the freeway management program. This particular item is an item to respond to incidents and accidents through photogrammetry software. So the police can shoot pictures of a scene and then go back to their office and recreate it. We're therefore not risking the police officer in an accident scene, risking their own safety as part of that. The other reason is when an incident occurs, there's a strong chance there's going to be an upstream rear-end collision. And that rear-end collision can often be a violent collision because you have a car that's stopped on the freeway and a car that's traveling a significant amount of speed. And to reduce those accidents, you want to get in and out of these freeways as quickly as possible. And that's what we teach in these training classes. So if you look at Appendix 1, I'll go through quickly. You have a copy of the October 2008 RTC resolution. You have the first responders that have been through our training, and this is a training we coordinated next door at the Regional Training Center. 2,410 police and fire have been through those training activities. I teach, along with Natalie, a police officer and a fire chief, the executive level class where we promote photogrammetry as a way to reduce risk. So you as city managers, county judges and commissioners and court administrators can understand the importance of getting your people in and out of these particular quarters. 442 policy officials have been to our training. And then 146 police officers have gone through the photogrammetry training to date. The cost of a unit is about $5,000. You asked for what others in the past have said about it. Appendix 1 has their summaries for you. There's a website that shows you the effectiveness, and then we end with general photogrammetry benefits. And there's 11 reasons why we're implementing photogrammetry within the region. I hope that answers the questions that you asked. So, going through a competitive procurement, DeChant Consulting Services for an amount not to exceed $350,000. This is to fund 60 additional units. Obviously, they won't be spent if they're not requested. This is for the training and the implementation of the technology for our police responders to get in and out of freeway corridors as quickly as possible, addressing this 50% delay that the region experiences due to incidents and accidents. And I'll stop there and give more information, and I'll be happy to take questions.
I want to thank you for the list and itemized who's using this and everything. Did y'all map out so all the interstates, the cities on these interstates are trained in this?
Yes.
So it's totally covered?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're constantly making sure they all use the same definitions, so we have protocols in place where they understand each other on those freeway systems.
Not approval. Move for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been doing this since '07, is that right?
I believe so.
And we spent, I think, like $2 billion on photogrammetry.
I don't think we've spent that much.
I found a place on somewhere on your website that had $2 billion
Yeah, we're probably, yeah, that may be photogrammetry and other things, but maybe responding to incidents.
So how many sets do we have now in use in the region? And how many, what is billed in it?
Well, a good clue would be, I think Natalie's here.
Was that 80?
You have somewhere just south of 146, because 146 police officers that went through the training. So you wouldn't have one for one, because more than one police officer would be trained. So fewer than 146, let's say 100 or so. And the demand is exceeding our ability to keep up with the request, which is why we're asking for 60 more.
With the 2 million that the judge may be referring to, I don't know the answer to that, I'm trying to clarify. That may be training as well as the actual physical.
Well, it could be training, it could be photogrammetry, it could be some intelligent transportation stuff. There'll be an item coming in 2 months where we're buying additional things above and beyond photogrammetry. I don't know the site, I can go find the site, but I would be surprised if we put $2 million in photogrammetry itself, because we only have 146 people that have gone through the training.
I just want to say thank you for the response, appreciate it.
And Judge, if you could give me that site, I can get you more information.
I'll have to find it again.
Okay. Well, we have a motion. Do I have a second? No, I'm sorry, Kevin. All in favor? Opposed, same sign. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Michael.
And I appreciate the question.
Resolution authorizing receipt of funds for Metropolitan Planning Organization, Revolver, Mercer.
Well, this is a long time in coming. When you work in an organization that does not have a taxing authority, when you're asked to pay your federal bills and then seek reimbursement, we've been doing that off of our RTC local, and originally we were doing it off of the cash flow of the agency. You have taxing authority, so when you get a federal grant, your city manager pays that expense, seeks federal reimbursement, and the federal government reimburses you with from your local money that you use for that federal purpose. So we've gone to the commission. They have approved $10 million to be used as a financial revolver, a dollar amount that stays there, which its value never goes down, can't be used for other things. The RTC has approved it. We told you a little bit about it when we presented the budget, and then told you we would bring this item back for your approval. So it's $10 million to be received from the Texas Transportation Commission to be put into an account. So when we're funding things like the regional signal timing program, and you instruct us to hire contractors, we take the money, pay the contractor. The RTC may be using CMAQ funds to pay that. We go to the federal government reimburses us, and that money goes back into that account. The revolver notion is the account revolves and is simply used for cash flow for the agency. The $10 million has already been approved by the commission. The mechanics of how this will work is some transportation project, 80% federal, 20% local, will go to the state. The state will go ahead and take that 20% local. Really doesn't matter what the project is. They'll switch local money for state money to maintain this 80-20 balance, and then they'll send that local money back to us. And they'll do it, Christie, in 2 or 3 projects until we get to the $10 million total. So we won't get a check for $10 million at one time. It'll come in a series of projects where the state will substitute the local share, and then those local funds will come to us as part of the revolver. I told you last time we would work hard to maintain the interest. We have that in your agreement. So the interest on the $10 million will stay with us. And Ken and Christie have worked out the details of that. So if you look at section 5 in the resolution, we maintain the interest capabilities. With regard to what that interest is used for, we're silent. That interest will stay in that account. Some future RTC may wish to use it for some purpose. In the meantime, it only can be used as part of the revolver, and this board would have to agree to whatever that purpose is. So some future generation, at these interest rates, that might get up to about 48 cents by July 4th. But that may not always be the case, and the group behind us would maybe make some decision on what it does. But the significant item of this is, as the RTC local goes down, we can stay in the business of implementing the projects you wish us to do, instead of saying, sorry, we can't help, we ran out of RTC local, we don't have cash flow anymore to help you. We have federal funds to help support it, but this gives at least this board and the RTC a choice that in certain circumstances, like the regional signal timing program, this entity may be the best entity to carry out the implementation of that program. Most of them aren't. Most of them, they go directly to TxDOT or DART or the toll road of the city or the county. But those that cross jurisdiction and other type programs, the RTC and you wish to be the implementers, you now have a revolver, if approved, that would carry out that capability or option for you. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Michael, I wish they had made it a little more complicated, but that's, yes, thank you for smiling. Does that in and out only go until we get to the 10 million?
Yes.
I mean, 10 million is nothing to them. Why don't they just write us a check and we have 10 million in the bank?
Well, I think it gets to the issue of, under state law interpretation, once money goes into the state,
Okay.
we happen to not agree with them, but we have situations where they try, Judge, to call RTR funds state, when we think RTC are local. Well, because they're sitting in Fund 6, this complicates their legal, so as Ken describes it to me, they're capturing them before they enter Fund 6 and simply returning them to us.
So that in and out will only go until we hit the 10 million, and then it'll be 10 million solid.
It'll be 10 million governed by this board forever. And I assume Monte will report quarterly or whatever his schedule is and say, here's where we are with the revolver. Now remember, the revolver will have two components, cash in the bank and reimbursements that are coming back. The sum of the two will be 10 million. Either you pay a bill for $1 million, it may not be back yet from whoever owes you the $1 million. But the sum of those two numbers, cash and reimbursements, will always equal $10 million.
But you gotta get there first.
You gotta get there first.
If they ever want to give that money back so they want to do all this accounting, we'll be glad to take it.
Which is why Section 5 is there as part of this item.
Yeah, this is Michael and South done a great job of working with the state, and we appreciate the state finally accepting the fact that we needed to have these dollars at the risk of very conservative area, quoting Vice President Biden, and I won't conserve verbatim, but this is a big deal. And it's going to be a lot of help as we go forward.
I'm just curious, Michael, is this for every MPO?
Oh, good question.
State?
This is only available to Dallas-Fort Worth, Austin, and Houston because of where transportation development credits and other things that are being used. Remember, we sold some of our credits to get 10 million in cash. Right now, Austin and Houston is going to watch us to see how we can use this by paying these invoices and so on and so forth. It's hard for Austin to be able to do it because the city of Austin is their fiduciary agent. So if you go to the city of Austin and say, would you pay in advance a signal timing program outside your city? It's probably not possible. So the fiduciary agent in Austin, I think, is too small because the MPO is much larger than the city. And then I think in Houston, they just want to get a little more experience from us before they try it there.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Oh, did you have a? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mike. And Mr. Morris, number 11, resolution authorizing the receipt of Federal Transit Administration funds and execution of necessary agreements.
This is Jesse Huddleston's item. It is an action item. This is an annual item that comes before you this time of year. The region's receiving $97 million in transit funds, 89.6 of it. The RTC is funded directly to the large transit agencies. They obviously can process their own funds directly with the Federal Transit Administration. The difference between those two is the $7.6 million. They're in 3 different programs. So if you go to your resolution, you'll see Section 1 is $5.2 million the urbanized area formula programs. This is for the SPANs and other transit agencies within the region whose funds come directly from the Regional Transportation Council. You have $1.7 million for enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. That's a program the RTC implements. And then there's a new program, Bus and Bus Facilities, $730,000. Those three programs are being approved with the largely 89.6 being funded directly to the transit agencies. So this is an annual allocation. This is this year's amounts, and I'll be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions? I don't see any lights. Oh, here's one.
So it's, I missed this to begin with, so we're not talking about the 89.6, we're only talking about the remaining.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because they're designated recipients, DART and everyone does it.
Okay.
Move for approval.
All right.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Scott and Mayor Mercer. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're down to number 12, the resolution authorizing submittal of grant applications to the State Farm Good Neighbor Citizenship Company Grant Program. Mr. Morris?
Well, this is an item we've been working on for a long time, and it's a request for funds. So we're approving our ability to seek these particular funds. State Farm is an unbelievably great corporate partner, and some of you near me on this side of the room know more about them than the rest of us, since they now have one of their headquarters in our region. And we've been interested in trying to get private sector companies to help fund the freeway management program, because this helps insurance companies by reducing accidents. It helps other types of private sector entities. So Natalie and I held a meeting, and after years of getting State Farm interested, now they may have a reason to come to a meeting where before they didn't. They showed up, and we're trying to reach out to them by competing in their national program. State Farm is big in Atlanta. State Farm is big in Florida. The mobility assistance crews in Atlanta have State Farm logos all over them. They're a big sponsor there. So we're going to try to help in two regards. One is the freeway management program, and then there's a small amount to promote bicycle and safety efforts. We also got to, not here, but we need to focus on pedestrian safety as well. Our region leads one of the top 10 or so metropolitan areas in the country with pedestrian accidents. So safety should be at our top of our list, along with the maintenance of our infrastructure. I was in Atlanta yesterday giving a presentation. Upstate New York is now prioritizing all their bridges for closing. They don't have enough money to maintain their bridges. So they're now going through elaborate systems on bridge condition, how much it costs to tear the bridge down, the security of the people, how much transportation capacity would they have to build to get to a parallel bridge. The notion that this region continues to do innovative things and create partnerships to have something like that never happen to us, I think is very important. So I'm hoping with State Farm here, they may be more interested than they were in the past. They certainly are coming to meetings now and they didn't before. So we're going to see if State Farm could help be a corporate. Now, we're not just picking State Farm. We made 50 calls to 30 other insurance companies, but State Farm is responding. And would like to see if we can compete and get some of their money. Right, Natalie?
And no one else responded? None of the others you contacted?
We have an interesting major automobile repair facility wants to participate as part of it. And AAA was at the meeting. They may want to be a sponsor. The AAA road service membership group. So we're going to continue to find opportunities, and when we get opportunities to compete, we'll bring them here and get your approval to try to go get money. But no other insurance companies have signed.
You said something about the pedestrian fatalities in this region? Are they mostly on freeways?
No.
No? They're in your city?
Intersection, crossing streets, late at night. Carla and Natalie are going to bring us a report on where are they occurring, what are their drivers that are causing this, what are the actions that are causing it, are they geographic based, is there any pattern, is there a time of day, so we can bring to the RTC corrective action on programs they may wish to do. No different than what the RTC did on wrong-way driving. If you're going to retrofitted all of the ramps to create greater illumination and huge improvement in signage. Not to say that that's going to solve the problem completely, but we are focused on the safety of the system.
I think that's great. There may be some issues in that would be on our legislative agenda also.
Could
be. Yeah. Okay, I look forward to that one. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes.
No, it's been moved for approval.
Oh, good. I thought you
For
were.
my new neighbor.
I was kind of waiting for that.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion. And a second? Oh, quickly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, Mr. Morris, resolution authorizing receipt of funds and consultant contract with AECOM for the State Highway 183 corridor master plan.
So Dan Kessler has been leading our effort with a whole host of organizations, from HUD funding to working with the Department of Defense to work around the Joint Naval Air Station. So if ever there was another BRAC mission, we could maintain the Joint Naval Air Station in the future. And remember, there's a large manufacturer there, Lockheed Martin, who is not in the runway business. So if for whatever reason we lost the runway that was managed by the Joint Naval Air Station, you were going to lose Lockheed Martin as well. So this has been a major strategic effort by the cities in the western side of the corridor, from Fort Worth to the west. And the planning process is reaching a conclusion. There'll be additional strategic planning, but now we're in the implementation phase. State Highway 183 is on the eastern side of the base. It probably hasn't changed in 40 years. It needs to be updated. This is a planning study to determine what's the best way to do it. It's similar to the project we did in Dallas on State Highway 78, where projects like Garland Road, State Highway 78 used to be the road to Garland from Dallas, and now it's called Central Expressway and LBJ. So how do you repurpose previous thoroughfare streets? The same set of questions is coming in on State Highway 183. One correction in your notes, if you would. River Oaks is increasing their allocation from 50,000 local maps to 80, but the 30 additional is actually coming from Tarrant County. So Tarrant County is partnered with River Oaks. River Oaks is taking that 30,000 and adding it, but it's really River Oaks is 50, with Tarrant County's 30. That adds up to an 80,000 local share. The RTC's in for 50, and this is a project to hire AECOM to work with our staff and those cities and county to reshape, redesign what is the future of this particular corridor, who basically, it hasn't changed much in a long period of time. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
So I just want to say, like, it happens to be in the city of River Oaks. It's what we do there, but the east gate really is
Right.
kind of what we're talking about, is critically important to the future of that base. There's roughly 11,000 jobs at Lockheed Martin, about 11,000 jobs at the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base. So it's a really important piece. As you get a look at that, you hate to think that you're going to come into one of these BRAC 2 situations, but we want to make sure that
We're ready.
everything that we can be ready for, we're ready for.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Madam President, Dan and Vicki work on the Unified Planning Work Program, and Dan will present your amendments to you on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll give Michael a breather. He's still got a ways to go, so. I was here in August As you recall, the executive board is a partner with the Regional Transportation Council. We are the fiscal agent for the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so when we modify what's referred to as our Unified Planning Work Program, it's essentially our scope of work over a 2-year period, we ask the RTC to approve the programmatic side of this, and then we'll come to you to approve the financial issues. This program is actually put together 2 years in advance from this period. So in the spring of 2013, we had to make estimates about how we would be spending our formula planning funds for both 14 and 15. We made some slight modifications going into FY15. You have actually approved these as part of the budget presentation that Monte presented in an aggregate sense, but we need to make a slight sort of reorganizing of our dollars by task. For FY15, you can see it's relatively small out of an $18.6 million program. We're just moving around dollars to accommodate some staffing and budget changes. These are highlighted for you. Some programs go up, some programs go down. In the end, we're actually programming an additional $139,000 of available revenue to make all this work for a total revised budget for a 2-year program from 18.5 to 18.6 million. The overall program looks like this. Of course, we get our Federal Transit Administration funds, our federal highway funds. There you see that unspent balance of 5.6 million. That's what we're reaching into for that additional 130+ thousand. For a total program of $22 million over 2 years, we budget right now. We're budgeting as a result of these changes the 18.6 million. We will carry forward into FY 2017. At this point, $3.7 million. Those are dollars, as we will always highlight for you, we keep in reserve in the event that Congress is slow to reauthorize our funding legislation. I actually anticipate that once we close out the FY14 books, this number will come up a little bit, probably something a little closer to $4 million. That's what we're planning on, but in terms of programming dollars, this is what these changes result in. Every year, Monte and I kind of do this dance in the summer. He's working on the budget. He's got a deadline. I'll call him. I'll say, Monte, can I add this? He'll say, yes. I'll call him, Monte, can I add this? And then we get to a point where Monte says, Dan, enough's enough. I've got to go to the board. We're going to have to bring those later on. So here's 4 examples of projects that I'm bringing for your approval financially. These are actually existing projects in our work program where our staff has sought additional funding. We've been awarded those dollars since Monte presented the budget to you, and so I need to go through the administrative step of making sure we reconcile that. The first one is we do a lot of technical consulting work with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. One of these tasks is we do what we call mission inventories. This is funding that TCEQ provides our staff to do that work. The other side of the air quality work is something we call conformity analysis. This is the process that we go through. We're doing right now in conjunction with our Metropolitan Transportation Plan updates to assure the federal government that indeed by implementing our plans and programs we will not in fact make the air quality worse. We will actually make contributions towards its improvement. We needed a slight amount of additional dollars, $25,000 coming from our surface transportation program to make all that work and that program budget come together. Our staff's always out there competing for dollars. I'm sorry to say, we were awarded the smallest Tiger award in the country, but the good news is, while most people got millions, we were awarded $210,000. It's a competitive grant, but this is a very important program. Michael certainly has a lot of passion, as all our staff do, about this. This relationship between transportation, metropolitan planning, and our schools. I think the federal government, even though it was a small amount of money, obviously I think they thought it was important enough to fund. And so they actually awarded us $210,000 in Tiger funds to continue this program. It's really focused on working with school districts on issues like the siting of new schools. That's sort of the front side of it. The back side of it is all the issues we just talked about, pedestrian access. That's a critical element in terms of school siting to make sure that we have safe ways for our kids to get to and from school. So again, not a lot of money in the context of the National Tiger grant program, which is typically construction dollars, but we were awarded some funds to continue that program. And then EPA, we are always actively looking for opportunities. EPA grants are just generally cycling to be lower in scope, but we're still going after the money where we can. Air quality technology improvements is something we've been at for a long time. This program was awarded through something called the DERA grant, the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. We were awarded $300,000 federal funds. I think the important part about this, though, is you can see a significant local match here, nearly twice the local match we're planning on in order to spend those dollars. So those will be projects that we reach out to the public and private sector where we have opportunities to improve emission reductions on diesel equipment. And that will actually take place. You'll see this again when staff goes out and does calls for projects, and we bring back to you the opportunity to fund specific opportunities with local governments or whoever the sub-grantees are, but we need to program those dollars. And one new project, it's not entirely to you, in that Michael mentioned this project to you last summer when we were seeking some additional federal funds, which we unfortunately did not receive. But there is a project that we talked about we're going to proceed with. It's this idea of using low-level flying unmanned aircraft to help us with data collection. We kind of have the unique opportunity with the City of Arlington police folks who do have a license. They have a vehicle and a license to use it. They're one of the few places in the country that do. And we're going to use this funding to do some what we call geographic information and survey work. This is really interesting pilot technology. I think it will greatly reduce some of the costs associated with aerial photography because you've taken really the airplane and the human factor out of it. So this is an interesting project. This work will all be done within the confines of the City of Arlington and largely around their airport as sort of a pilot exploratory project to do low-level aerial photography, GIS, and survey work with that technology. And that summarizes sort of the changes. This is the schedule we're on. We've been, with all of this, we've been in public meetings through our technical process. The RTC has approved these modifications. With your approval, these will go on to our state and federal partners.
We can go back to the EPA, the $300,000 from EPA. It says it's for idle reduction technology that targets vehicles for goods movement purposes. What exactly are we going to use the money for?
So, I don't know if we have any of our air quality folks in here, but one of the opportunities we've seen, Judge, is where you have emissions as a result of diesel vehicles idling. And we've taken a pretty active attempt at that. In fact, you'll see out here we've got idle reductions in place. This is really to work with the freight community and the realization that a lot of these trucks are idling at their terminal facilities. And there are things we can do, electrification, which we've done at truck stops, where those trucks can shut those vehicles off and handle the air conditioning and everything they need to do on that unit without having to run the vehicle. And I think this is an opportunity to reach out further to where we've identified in those locations in the private sector. Could be additional truck stop work, but I think specifically we're looking at truck terminals. Is there an opportunity to reduce those that item? Operational benefit.
So we're going to, still unclear, are we going to pay them to electrify their trucks so they can shut it down?
We will, yes, well, there's different ways to do it. There's through batteries and there's through third unit electrification that can plug into the vehicles. We're essentially providing a subsidy for them. Basically, if you look at the 1/3, 2/3 relationship, we're providing the federal share and they're providing the 2/3, essentially the 2/3 match.
So that will be from someone that gets part of the EPA funding, they will match it. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. I apologize if I didn't make that clear.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead,
I have
gentlemen.
one question. Well, back several years ago, under the, I think it's 5.13 Aviation Education and Integration and Outreach, I remember there was discussion here and funding that came through, it was UTA maybe, that was sponsoring continued enhanced education programs in the aviation industry, and there was some funding available. Has that program since gone away, or are they still pursuing that?
No, and I think the best yet, it's still very active. We continue to make great strides, I think particularly, well, honestly, at both the high school and the university level with these education outreach programs, and we've seen programs coming online, particularly from some of the junior colleges. We are, though, still actively looking for private sector opportunities to continue to fund that initiative, and that's something we're all actively working on at this point. We do still think it's, we are one of the aviation
L3.
capitals of the world.
L3 is one we're speaking to.
So, yes, it's a program that continues, and additional funds are, we hope there's some private sector support for that out there.
So these funds, the funds that are shown here, are only federally funded allocations that are shown on this chart? Or would those funds be?
These are the new ones.
I don't know that we're programming any new dollars for that, Judge. I think what you're seeing in that packet is an item that is already in place. The low-level aerial photography project I just briefed you on is a new project that we're adding to that section of the work program that's already in place to do that work. It's aviation related, and so this section of work's dropping in. You're seeing an existing project where we're dropping this additional work in place. And one of the aviation projects is that ongoing education initiative.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any others? Not seeing any, I'll ask for a motion.
To approve.
A motion is, have a second?
Second.
Have a second? Okay, well. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good report. We'll move to item 15, and Mr. Morris, resolution authorizing contract amendment with Providence Engineering and Environmental Group.
If I could give a quick highlight on the cumulative impact of this board, all residents of the region, the RTC, local governments, business. This is the report we send monthly out to the Regional Transportation Council. We're reaching the end of the ozone season here at the end of October. You can see we had a very good year with regard to ozone. I think the weather had a big impact, but you still see this general trend down with regard to programs that are lowering emissions, from the turnover of new cars to everything you just talked to with regard to Dan. It is having benefits. In fact, for the first time, the good news is we now are meeting the 85 part per billion standard. The bad news is that's no longer the standard. The standard has been revised downward, so we're still a little bit behind. This will come in handy. We briefed you, and I think Mr. Eason briefed you, with regard to a legal issue that EPA has with the Sierra Club, with regard to some potential negative impact it may have with offsets of new companies trying to come to our region. Now that we're in compliance with that standard, this is a tool that EPA will use to get into the Federal Register to potentially help them with that particular situation. But we are on our way to meeting the existing standard, which is at 75 parts per billion, with a rating as of today is still sitting around 81. You still see the general trend. This data is the actual number of exceedances. This is actually the legal binding definition of how that standard is measured with 3 years worth of data. That's why this looks more like a ladder instead of a straight line. And it's because of how the standard itself is met. But we've had a good ozone season with regard to that. TCQ has requested additional work. In fact, the $120,000 item you see here is the one Dan just presented to you in the previous item. This is additional monies that we wish to add to a consultant contract. We have a consultant already underway to help do emission inventories for Chris Klaus. We'd like to add $40,000 to it to do the additional work that TCQ has asked. We try to take the tops off the workloads, so we're hiring for the valleys and not hiring for the peaks. And then the increment is the best met through consultant services. And that's what we're requesting in this particular case. So this is to aid TCQ in doing additional emission inventory work that has been requested of us as part of this work that drives this planning process. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have tonight at this meeting.
You think we'll ever meet standard?
Oh, yeah, well, this is like the third one we've met.
I know. Then keep the glory up.
Michael, go back to the previous slide just a second, please. The one that shows 81.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You're asking me to do something technical.
You asked me to do something technical twice in a
That's what
row.
they're all laughing over there.
They won't be laughing long.
Whenever the wash machine starts smoking, we know that we need to add in some.
Here it comes.
Okay, time, Mr.
Now,
Mayor.
one more where we're looking right there, we're going. I want to point out something here. We had 12 days within about 140 or 50 days that we did exceed with the standard. What we never talk about is those days that we did meet the standard and the fact that they are down below the 75 area. So when people talk about how bad our area is, we really need to put context. The other thing is we had Denton Marshall at 81. Those other exceedances were in the mid range of the 70s and a little bit above. And so we are seeing improvement in our air quality. Now, weather really does have a tremendous amount to do with it. The unfortunate part is, as good as our staff is, as good as you are at making policies, we can't control the weather. And that's the difficult part about the air quality law. It doesn't recognize those types of things. It just recognizes when you have an exceedance. We have seen the consent decree that I mentioned at the last meeting. It does have within it the provisions by which we can get out from under being a severe designated area. One of them is to get EPA and TSEC moving fast enough to recognize we have met this standard. That's probably not going to happen. There's too many notices that have to be given and too many time frames that have to be met in order for it to be timely. The other is for them to get their rule for the 75 standard actually published. And so that's where we're going to be really putting our concentration is politically and administratively. EPA, you've got to get the rule making for the 75 standard. You're holding us to it, you're holding the state to it, yet you haven't given implementation rules yet. And if we can get that done within 180, 210 days, then I think we are going to be okay. But it is a big help and something that's going to have to be diligently pursue. I just want to take this time to kind of give you an update to that, and the fact that we're probably going to be coming back to this board and to RTC to make a political encouragement to EPA to get the rule promulgated and into effect.
How does that help us for them to publish it if they're already willing to?
Well, what we were talking about is if we didn't meet the 85 standard in 2013, the Sierra Club sued EPA and said you should have re-designated them as a severe area. The consent decree was an agreement between the Sierra Club of California and EPA to do that, with the provisions within the consent decree said we can redesignate them back to probably what's going to be a moderate or worse, a serious designation under the 75. But in order to effectuate that, the standard has to be, the rules for implementing the standard has to be out, or the redesignation, since we have met the 85 standard, has to take place. Time frame wise, they can't get the 81 redesignated. In fact, we met 85 standard by being at 81. We can't get redesignated fast enough. The only hope we have is to get the rules promulgated, which should have been promulgated here or so back. And I don't understand all the technical aspects of it and legal aspects of it, but the concern was if they don't get this done, we may live with some of the requirements of a severe designation, even if we go forward into a new standard, where we probably would, well, I think most likely would have a lower classification of something in the moderate to serious. And it really gets to the offsets that you have for a new industry. They go ahead and look at and you get to some of the control strategies that you would have to put into place in order to meet that severe. It may not be required for a serious designation.
Wouldn't it help if all of us went to our congressional delegation and said they are holding us to a standard that's not yet promulgated?
Our holding to a standard which the rules of implementation are not yet. Yes, that's what we'd like to work with. You get just a little bit more, make sure we have all of our facts exactly right. But yes, that's what we will be coming back essentially and asking is that every effort be made to put every bit of pressure we can on OMB and EPA to get this rule promulgated.
And I think we've looked at that in the past, and we've tried to put pressure via our legislature on that. The problem is there's no relaxation because, at least what I've been told is there's a big concentration up in the Northeast, and they're not really interested in letting us off the hook. Because if they do that, then those folks are going to continue to move at an even quicker rate away from the Northeast.
Yeah, I don't know. There's certainly been some for the designations. December the 1st, we're going to have, if EPA meets their time schedule, we will have a new standard, which is going to be much lower than the 75 that we're also going to be dealing with. And now we're going to get the Northeast and a lot of the West, many areas of the country under the Clean Air Act requirements that haven't been in the past. This truly is OMB and EPA lack of movement on getting these implementation rules promulgated for the 75.
You're too busy writing healthcare stuff.
I think the 2 points that are important. One, I think it's generally good news to see this fall so dramatically. But the point simply is it may give the region some flexibility since EPA was sued under this standard and the standard no longer exists. EPA obviously made a mistake. They should have done whatever they were supposed to do even though the standard doesn't exist. But now that we attain that particular standard, it does show some light, regardless of which way we go. It's easier on the policy official to say, well, look, why are you penalizing us for offsets on our industry on a standard that doesn't exist? And oh, by the way, a standard we now meet. And
which hopefully will be the part that helps to persuade, we need to get this new implementation rule promulgated.
So I think it is a good news.
Absolutely.
Report.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I have one question. So does this mean they get to ask for more money if they delay this in order to implement this? Is there some underlying reason?
I don't know what all takes place at the federal level, but they have never been able to achieve a time frame in which they said things were going to be accomplished. I know there's a lot of argument within EPA itself. I know there's a lot of scientific community that weighs in, the environmental community, and I'm sure congressional, but it's just, so I don't know that it's necessarily tied to money as much as it's just a procedural aspect of getting it finally accomplished.
Well, I just wondered the pie seemed to get smaller, and everybody up there is fighting for their money. So this is one weapon they could use to expand their budgets.
Well, from a human resource standpoint and perhaps some dollars, they use this. If we had the resources, we could have gotten this out faster, but I'm not sure if that's really an argument that could stand a lot of scrutiny.
Okay. Anyone else? And I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Have a
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries. Okay, Mr. Morris, item 16, resolution authorizing consultant contract with Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates for planning services for the Fort Worth Transportation Authority.
So about 20% of our planning funds comes from the Federal Transit Administration, and we hold some of those monies for our staff, and we hold some of those monies for consultants. The Fort Worth has been aggregating theirs up for some time to redo their transit plan on the western side of the region. A relatively new board, brand new executive director, wanting a clean start on how can we do a much better job at transit within the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. So this is a project we've been planning for and saving money for some time. This is to redo the bus, largely bus, but whatever transit innovation can be done on the western side of the region. 400,000 of it is the funds, the planning funds that Dan showed you on that table that come from the Federal Transit Administration. They're being matched with $100,000 from the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. They wish us to procure the consultants since they are our planning funds. So a team of folks went through the procurement process. I guess you had people from the T on there and other transit agencies. And here is the recommended firm to do that particular work, to implement basically a new 5-year plan and future for how transit should operate in the Fort Worth, Tarrant County side of the region. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay.
Move approval.
So a motion to approve, and a second? Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Good. We're down to item 17, the resolution authorizing consultant contract with Kinley Horn and Associates to implement the Frontage Road traffic signal retiming during incidents program. Michael?
There's not a lot of things we do around here that make me really smile, but this is one of the more exciting ones. Working with Chris Klaus, we've been able to get rid of the lower environmental speed limits that have been on the freeways, largely in the suburban and rural parts of our region. 15 years or so ago, cars had very high emissions at high speeds, so we lowered them 5 miles an hour. So this is, Collin County all the way around the Horn, basically outside our loops. So technology is much improved. We've gotten now approval from the Regional Transportation Council. Chris is now working with TCEQ. We've gotten this out of the state implementation plan into a place that more easily can modify this particular initiative. So 2 things happen with regard to speeds. Not only do the speeds move up 5 miles an hour, since they're no longer environmental speed limits, TxDOT now has the flexibility to appropriately set that speed limit for safety reasons. And the way that is done in our industry is you go measure the speed of all the cars traveling on a route, and you set the speed limit at the 85th percentile. The safest speed you can travel on a freeway is a speed that everyone is traveling at. The most dangerous place is to have it artificially low, where some people are following the speed limit and other people are driving the roadway design. Most people drive the roadway design, they don't drive the speed limit signs. This should bring us safety. This should greatly improve the drivability of the system. There was a small offset in emissions. So we had to offset those emissions. So we went through a process and came up, okay, what programs would we do? I wish this program was in effect this morning because I left my house at 7:30 to give a presentation at 9 o'clock in Richardson. And I was 10 minutes late, so it took me 1 hour and 40 minutes to get from Arlington to Richardson. And of course, everyone laughs when the transportation director can't get around the region. So,
You were 10 minutes late?
oh, Judge. So, we bet every time he beats me to a meeting. So, the way we're offsetting the emissions is we're going into the freeways that have continuous frontage roads. And back to this incident or accident that occurs, How many times have you been frustrated where, oh, the freeway is shut down? I'll get off the ramp onto the frontage road, and then the frontage road has its regular signal timing plan, and you're sitting through 5 red signals because, hey, why isn't someone smart enough to know that the freeway has an accident, and why can't we have more green time on the frontage road? So this is a program the RTC crafted. It reduces the emissions to permit the speed limits to be updated, so we can go into freeways that have high volumes, have continuous frontage roads. A good example would be, say, a Central Expressway, high volume, continuous frontage road, where we will have prearranged traffic signal timing plans for each section of the freeway. So when the TxDOT sees the incident working on the prearranged signal timing plans, the green times on the frontage road will automatically increase. Instead of probably being, because you don't expect that a lot of the frontage road when there's a lot of the freeway, it might be 40% green time north, let's say in Central, 60% green time to get to and from the freeway. You don't want a lot more people going to and from the freeway if the freeway's already bottlenecked. You want people to go parallel, so we may change it to like 70% green time north, 30% east-west. And all this will be done in advance. So once the incident occurs, the signals are automatically turned green. A, giving us the air quality benefits, but more getting at this 50% problem that we have. So we're identifying all the corridors. Natalie's in charge of the program. She doesn't go up there, and she goes out 3 times some traffic signals, but not all of these. So we needed additional consultant assistance to design this program. The RTC has funded it with congestion mitigation air quality funds. This is the air quality program that Chris will take to TCEQ to modify the environmental speed limits in our state and get rid of them in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. So with your approval, that work will be able to proceed with the Kimley Horn Consulting Company. They went through a competitive procurement process here to garner that work, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Given our past experience with CMAQ money, once we do this, will we be able to ever change it in the future? Or will it be forever set?
You mean the rules for use of CMAQ funds?
Yeah, I'm referring back to managed land. We can never
Oh,
do anything else with it. Will we be able to change this should we need to?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about your managed lane issue. That's your second or third thing to think about there. No, in this particular case, the programs would be built. The judge is alluding to, we use CMAQ funds for managed lanes, and we've been told we can introduce single occupant vehicles to the managed lane, but we can't convert the managed lane to a free lane. And the feds have weighed in on that particular item.
That truly is a broader issue than just CMAQ funds. It's generally an issue that you can't take a free lane and convert it to a managed or a toll lane and then try to go.
Well, it's actually like an OMB procurement question. You used your money for a particular purpose, and now you're changing the purpose. So can we simply pay you for a misstep we made? And the Fed interpretation of a longer standing federal rule is no, you can't, because we at Federal Highway were never granted that authority by Congress to be able to do a do-over type of item. So it's a very tight legal question, but I think we should set that all aside.
Yeah, I think to answer your question.
I think this is one of the best programs I've seen come through here. This is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, so I know that one's a ticklish one, Judge, but you're right. I think this is kind of a really cool.
I'll second the judge's motion.
Good. Yes, I agree. I think it's an exceptional program, and sorry we're so far, but we're into it now and we'll get it done. That's good. We have a motion and a second.
One of the questions I would ask
Okay.
is, and I know you mentioned a little bit about this whole study along the interstates. Could you tell us what progress has been made on that study along the speed limits as you come to those places that have a serious revenue intention on interstate highways?
So at the RTC, there was a conversation. There's 3 or 4 communities that, let's say, have more aggressive enforcement of the speed limits in their part of the interstate highway than, say, what a normal community would do. And What the judge is indicating, if we use the 85th percentile speed, and everyone who travels that corridor regularly knows that the speeds are more enforced in that particular community than along the rest of the corridor, the data gives you actually an unsafe finding, because you have people traveling, they feel comfortable traveling, let's say, 70, and then because there's a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit heavily enforced, now all of a sudden we got people going slow to that community that's very sensitive to speed, and then it goes up, and then the 85th percentile speed gives you some unintended outcomes because the geometrics of the road is the same, meaning the people should feel just as comfortable, but because cities have intervened more aggressively, it's not correct. So my request to the state was to do their speed studies on the weekend, because commuters know the roads really, really good, and on the weekend there are people traveling the roads that may not have knowledge of what it is you're talking about, and I think that has helped. So we're getting weekend 85th percentile speeds that would closer be uniform speeds across a corridor, so we don't have to do something silly like in a 2-mile section artificially lower the speed because of aggressive enforcement of a speed limit sign. And I'm trying to use English words to not get me in trouble.
You did pretty good. Yes, very good.
I just had one question. So this speeds up pass-through traffic on the freeway. It's a block. It goes to the service road.
Yes.
So if you put 70% passage of frontage road traffic through a community, what happens to the cross traffic when half the city's on one side and half the city's on the other side, and the money-making part's on one side and they can't get there?
Well, remember, half of your freeway you're not going to be able to get on anyway because it's already shut down.
Right.
This is for when it's really,
right.
You know, so you're stopped. So half of your traffic is still trying to get to the freeway. 50% of that traffic is probably not going to get on the freeway because they can't.
Right.
So we'll eventually get dynamic message signs to the cross-street traffic and say, look, northbound, let's say Central Expressway, is stopped. And they'll take a northbound street sooner, so they don't even come into the item directly. But you are correct. You're having a short-term pain on the east-west traffic for a huge north-south gain in the case of Central Expressway.
Well, you know, on some of these expressways, there's a wreck probably every hour or two.
Well,
it blocks up the traffic, so if it happens all day long.
You'd have to have maybe a different standard, you know, if the freeway is at 12 miles an hour for 8 hours of the day, you know, you only could do it when it's dead stop probably, because you can't do green times 80% of the time. So that's what the purpose of this is to go in and find, and there's a lot of technology questions, you know, you got signals on a frontage road 10 miles, they may be under 4 different cities' control. So there's some institutional issues that will have to be brought in on, okay, how do these technologies talk to each other? And again, you don't have to go all 10 miles. You just got to go from the upstream to where the incident occurred. And then obviously they'll all be flowing back on the traffic. So you don't want to have green times north of where the incident is. But all of those issues of occurrence and severity will have to go into the design of this program. Those are good observations.
Good. Okay. Did those cities that are more aggressive, did they accept the excuse of, I was driving roadway design?
No.
I just wondered.
They probably don't say anything out loud. They probably don't say anything out loud, but their inside voice would say, I believe we're creating revenue for our city that we can't collect.
I heard that roadway design, I thought,
And I think the only people you're going to catch on that weekend are the Yankees that are down here. For 40 years, Buffalo has been a speed trap going up and down 45, and you know that.
Okay. Madam Chair, 2 things. I spent 17 years as a municipal judge, and that excuse didn't never did fly. The second thing is I want to congratulate Judge Self on his very first motion. This is the first motion Judge Self has never gone to the court. Thank you for great time. Well, this is a great way to
voted on my motion yet, Madam Chairman.
I know, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
You did it was great. Well, we have already addressed item 18, and so we are down to miscellaneous items. Do we have any old or new business? Or any future agenda items anyone would like to see on the agenda? I think not, so with that, I will say we are adjourned. Thanks for being here.